Alright, welcome everyone. Today we'll be talking about pre-calculus, the beginning of Unit 6, which is dealing with the deeper things in trig you haven't covered yet. So today we will talk about angles and radian measures. So this is a huge one. Okay, so angles and radian measures comes from the idea with the unit circle. So we have the unit circle right here. Let's go a different color. Come on. Okay, and unit circle is obviously, it has a radius of 1. It just works right around. Now, standard position is right here. So this is standard position. And so you're always going to have standard position right there. Now, what happens to the rest of the actual line depends on the angle. Okay? Alright, so now let's say we go out to here, and this in between is theta. So let's go theta. Okay, so that's theta right there. Okay, so that's the central angle, and we measure this in degrees. Okay, but the thing we really haven't talked about is how do we measure out here along the edge of the circle. And we're going to measure that in radians. Okay, and radians are as if we were able to go around this entire thing and come back to this one spot. Well, if you think about it, that's circumference. Circumference is 2 pi, there we go, times the radius. Okay, and the radius of this is going to be 1 because it's a unit circle. And so circumference becomes 2 pi. Okay, so something as simple as that. So this whole thing going around from here to here, this is 0 radians in the beginning, and then if we come back around to the end, this would be 2 pi radians. Okay? Alright, so that's coming back around. Now, if we only went halfway, that would be half of 2 pi, which would just be pi radians. Okay, so that's actually really kind of cool. And if we only went a quarter of the way around of 2 pi, a quarter of 2 pi is pi halves. So 227. Alright, so each quarter is a half of a pi, so 2 pi halves makes a whole pi, which makes sense. Now if I went 3 times around, if I went 3/4 of the way around, I should be at 3 pi halves. So 3 pi halves. Okay? Alright, so that's some really cool stuff to do. Now what you're also going to do is you're going to be able to break this up. Okay, now what if I cut this right down the middle? Well, if I cut pi halves in half, I get pi quarters. So this would be pi quarters radians. Okay, so something as simple as that. Now if I went 2 pi quarters, that would be pi halves. And if I went 3 pi quarters, that's just 3 pi quarters. Okay, and then if I go 4 pi quarters, I'm at pi. If I go 5 pi quarters, which would be right here, that would be seriously 5 pi quarters. If I go 6 pi quarters, that's the same as 3 pi halves. And if I go 7 pi quarters, that is going to be the same as just 7 pi quarters. You know, nothing really fancy to change. 7 pi quarters. Okay, and then if I go around another pi quarters, I'm going to get back to 8 pi quarters, which turns into 2 pi. Okay, so as you can see, I can break it down that way. Right, now I can also break this down into sixths and pi thirds. Okay, so I've got pi thirds or pi 6 here, and I've also got pi thirds. Okay, and that will continue around and stuff. Okay, so when we are thinking about using measurements, okay, we're going to probably be using radians. And since we're going to be doing measurements, we're probably going to be talking about just radians for the rest of the time. So if you like degrees, here's an easy conversion chart. So radians to degrees. So if you want to go from radians to degrees, here's the steps you do. You multiply by 180 degrees divided by pi. Okay? Alright? And the reverse is also true. If you want to go from degrees to radians, okay, you multiply by pi divided by 180 degrees. Okay? Alright, so back to talking about angles and radian measurements. Okay, now that does change a little bit about how we work with stuff now, because now we have a proper measurement for arc length and area of a circle sector. Now you've already learned these formulas in geometry, but please understand when you are doing it in actual mathematics, make sure you are using radians in both mathematics, trigonometry, and pre-calculus. You are using radians from now on. Okay, so plug in radians for these actual formulas. Now, when you get an answer, we don't need the decimal conversion, but if you could leave it in terms of pi, that would be fantastic, and that would just save us a whole headache of troubles. Okay, but that's it for angle, radians, and measures. If you guys have any questions, just think about dividing 2 pi into all kinds of measurements, and you can actually come up with a whole bunch of things. Thank you.